In the last episode, we witnessed some very crazy and bold moves on different sides, some bolder than others. Let's recap a little so we can see how this war unfolds on both sides of the world. The Gauls and Germans' negotiations fell and they both resort to war. Rome gets involved and gets all three of them to sign a military alliance against Spain. Spain has control of a city inside Gallic territory, which the Gauls don't like. The three allies hatch a plan and start marching against the Spanish city and Spain itself, but not before amassing tens of thousands of troops in central Gaul. Over in the east, the Spartans and Parthians both raced to expand north, hoping to outpace the other, but they expanded evenly with each other. Spartan having the bigger military, they had a little more play and a little more gut to play with the Parthian army, with both playing cat and mouse, trying to get the other to attack, test their military strength, and even draw them out in a trap. One side prepares for a big and bold move. So here we are, with the stage set for two massive wars. Let's see how the different factions play out. We will focus on three separate big battles in today's video. Let's see how it goes. The Spanish, after controlling the Gallic city for a couple of months, have expected an assault on the city sooner rather than later. In their worry, they decide to send out some scouts throughout Gaul to get some eyes on the field and to find a possible weakness in the enemy's forces. The scouts were spotted by the time they reached northern Gaul by the British Isles, where they witnessed a huge Gallic army cross the channel from Britannica. Other scouts reached central Gaul and southeastern Gaul. All the scouts were wiped out by a small Roman army, so their secret staging area was safe. During all this, Gaul, Germany, and Rome all had troops pouring in from their territories to help support the war against Spain. They eventually amassed around 40,000 troops. During this time back in the east, the Parthians and Spartans finally have their first engagement. A larger Spartan army intercepted a Parthian army marching west into their territory and managed to almost completely destroy it with minimal losses to their own. That Parthian army fled into their closest city while the Spartans gave chase. The Spartans also send a legion to the Parthian capital and wait, challenging and breaking morale to the troops and citizens inside that city. Back in Gaul, the Spanish get marching troops from Spain to defend the city. With almost 3 legions in size, the Spanish are confident they can keep the city out of Gallic's hands for at least a few more months. The Western Alliance still keep building up their forces in central Gaul, planning and rehearsing the siege of the city. They bide their time until they get the necessary size force to defeat such a large occupied Spanish army. The Spartans start pushing the Parthians further east inch by inch as the army chases the fleeing Parthians back to the city and march towards their capital. With Sparta at the Parthians' front door, the Parthian government freezes and panics. With no leadership in the Parthian government making moves, the military must sit and wait and defend the capital. With fear setting into the Parthians, mistakes are sure to be made. While the Western Alliance builds up their forces, the Romans send out scouting cohorts north and south of the Spanish-occupied city to see if any flanks can be taken advantage of and to draw out any traps as well. The Gauls and Germans still sit and wait for their reinforcements to arrive. The Germans also send troops east from their territory to march to Illyrica to capture its resources. In the east, the Spartans make the first big move and lay siege to the Parthian capital. Let's see how they conducted the siege. With the Spartans being slightly outnumbered, they attack the capital of Khania with full confidence. Having a full legion, they send their first line of 4 cohorts first. The 4 cohorts go back and forth and winning, and within a couple hours lost a couple of cohorts. But they managed to get wall ladders and climb the walls of the city and attack the garrison on the wall. With the rest of the Spartan legion shooting volleys, they send a fresh line of troops of 4 cohorts up the ladders. Spartan cohort races for the gate, battling every inch the whole way. The Parthians give hell of a fight, taking out hundreds of troops. Within the first 4 Spartan cohorts wiped out, the Spartans start to lose faith and slow down the momentum towards the gate. The Spartan general sees this and gets involved in the battle, rallying his troops to push their way to the gate. With 2 fresh Spartan cohorts in reserve, they wait for the moment the gate is open. With this Spartan general fighting with his men. The men find inspiration and a second wind and push back against the superior numbered Parthians. Using this, they eventually push to the gate, killing about 6 cohorts of Parthians. With about 3 Spartan cohorts left on the wall, they get the gate open and Spartan troops fled into the city, battling the last few Parthian troops. The 3 Spartan cohorts on the wall joined the battle, flanking the Parthians and eventually killing them and capturing the general, only to execute him. With only 1 cohort left after the battle, the Spartans successfully occupy the city, but they have an entire population to control, so they send for reinforcements from the west. With their capital captured, the Spartans have dealt a huge blow to the Parthian people, completely rendering them unable to rebuild any military. The Spartans took huge losses as well, but deemed it necessary for such an important target. The Western Alliance start mobilizing their troops and start marching south towards Spain. With their troops numbering in the tens of thousands, they still leave a large force behind in reserves. The Roman consul is convinced that there are more Spanish troops moving about in the area, or plan to. The Roman consul takes command of the joint forces without invitation, but no one fights back or even minds. Spanish general in the Spanish-controlled city seems pretty confident about defending this city, though it's only in the numbers. The Spanish have inferior armor and weapons than any of the 3 factions, except maybe the Gauls, but the Romans and Germans more than make up for it. While the Spartans reinforce the newly captured capital, they make the Parthians worry even more when they station a legion and a half outside their northern city, which is the second largest city that they have. This takes a huge hit on morale for the Parthians, already knowing their capital fell almost a week before. The Romans and Gauls send a total of 8 cohorts to blockade the Spanish city inside Gaul. Their plan is to keep Spanish troops from leaving or reinforcing the city. The Germans capture Illyrica a couple weeks later and expand their military and territory to the east. The Spartans start their siege on the next city, thus starting the siege of Byzantine. With an entire legion, the Parthians decide to sally forth and meet the Spartans on the battlefield before they reach the city itself. With the Spartans having 2 full legions for battle, the Parthians' nerves are rattled. The mere sound of their marching quicks their legs as fear starts to set in. This gets worse real quick. The Spartans send 2 lines of 16 cohorts in the first wave, keeping 4 cohorts in reserve. The Parthians spread their line thin in an attempt to prevent a flank. As the Spartans march forward, the Parthian commander keeps his men still and decides to go for a defense. Being new to war, he has little experience in maneuvers and tactics. This becomes a mistake soon. As the Spartans' line meets with the Parthians, the Spartans decide to move their full reserve cohorts around the right flank and behind the Parthians and assault them from behind. With the Parthian troops locked in combat and no reserve cohorts, there is nothing they can do to stop the flank. The battle goes back and forth, pretty even, but surprisingly the Spartans start to take more losses than the Parthians do, despite being flanked. The Spartan commander sees this and decides to act. He orders his Spartans to make a shield wall and extend spears while the flankers take them out from behind. This stops a lot of the losses for the Spartans. As the left Parthian flank falls apart, the Spartans completely surround the right flank and do this same technique. The Parthians' morale goes out the window when their left flank collapses, and don't do well to defend themselves after that. The Parthian commander failed in his defense of the city, but the Parthians have killed more Spartans than they expected, leaving only 6 out of 20 cohorts left for the Spartans. Spartans yet again take a huge hit to their numbers, but again deem it acceptable losses in the taking of an important target. Without the Parthian city having a garrison, the 4 cohorts overrun it and occupy it, claiming Spartan ownership and raising the Sparta flag. The Spartans again start moving a lot of troops to reinforce to the newly captured city. With the Parthians totally demoralized, the Spartans see an inevitable victory in the war. With them now setting their sights on the next target, they start drawing up plans to send troops to the nearest Parthian city. The Parthians have lost 2 of their most important cities, one being their capital in a matter of 2 weeks. This virtually cripples the politics and military of the entire nation, with people fleeing settlements in other smaller cities. The people lose hope of the military keeping them safe. With the Romans and Gauls still denying the Spanish from reinforcements, the Germans seemed to be pulling out and redeploying in the east after receiving a cry for help from the Parthians. The Spanish decided to sit and wait a little longer, and morale seemed to be not affected by the blockade, meaning the Spanish were ready for a drawn-out, bloody battle for control of the city. Parthia sends for help to the Germans as Sparta closes its grip on them. Hope still remains with the Parthian troops, even with these impossible odds that are against them. Germany sends a legion to assist, though in their own way. They head for the northernmost Spartan city close to their newly acquired territory. Sparta plans ahead and puts together siege plans for the last Parthian city, assuming they are successful in capturing this third city from them. The Spartan general is confident and doesn't seem to be taking a break from his momentum until all of Parthia is captured. The siege on the city is about to start, and it will be fought hard. After weeks of being blockaded, the exterior Spanish garrison, which were over a legion strong, decides to attack the blockade from two fronts. The Spanish decide to have a full legion march on the northern side of the blockade and fight south, into the long line of Romans and Gauls that stretched miles around the southern side of their city. They also sent about 4 more cohorts on the western end of the blockade. This spread confusion around the Roman and Gallic forces, hearing rumors of attacks from both flanks. They were not sure what to do. After an hour of confusion, the Roman commander decided to go look for himself, grabbing a horse and getting an elevated look on the surrounding area. Seeing in the distance torchlights and faint screaming and horns of the furthest cohorts. He had seen the north end of the blockade had a by far larger enemy force attack them. The Roman commander decided to put more towards the smaller enemy force to quickly destroy it so he can move on to the bigger Spanish legion. He also sends a messenger to send for more Gallic and Roman reinforcements. The Roman commander sends his tribune to command the forces in the north being attacked by a whole legion, while he works on the smaller force. The Spanish commander goes for a blitz tactic of just running over the blockade, but this only lasted until the Romans and Gauls got out of their confusion. The Romans sound the horn to maneuver the troops into a defensible line and meet the Spanish head-on, making it more of a fair fight. The Spanish hit a wall after the Romans and Gauls start to organize and the Spanish start taking on heavy losses. The Roman commander barely manages to eliminate the Spanish forces in the west, while his second has trouble holding on with the bigger Spanish legion. The Roman commander receives a message from the second saying his line is about to fall and that he has 2 cohorts left defending. The Romans then fast march to support the battle in the north with the 4 cohorts they have left. The Spanish at this point also have a total of 6 cohorts left, making it an even match. With an hour of fighting, the two sides are almost completely evenly matched and take the same amount of losses, but the Romans, being tired from fighting a battle prior to this, starts to get fatigued and start taking more losses. The Spanish start pushing harder once they start taking the advantage of numbers. The Spanish commander starts to feel fear once he hears a deep Roman horn sound from his north. A reinforcement of almost an entire legion of Roman and Gallic forces marched towards them, flanking them in the rear. The tides turned back to the Roman and Gallic forces as the Spanish are hit from the back. The Spanish all but gave up and the Romans and Gauls quickly slaughtered them where they stood. It was a close battle, but it was won by the Romans and Gauls. The Spanish garrison morale went from high to almost none when they watched, bearing witness to their brothers in arms being executed by Gauls or crucified by Romans. Battle drums sounded, and the sound of it all shook the Spanish to their very core. Scared out of their minds, wishing they were trapped, alone from the Spanish homeland. Without any contact from Spain, the reinforcements were almost impossible. The Battle of La Rochelle saw a Roman and Gallic victory this night. The siege of La Rochelle was next on the Romans' list. The Spanish don't know what to do after taking such heavy losses at the city of La Rochelle. This being a killer to Spanish morale, they contemplate banning the city and all who defend it. The Spartan military moves a lot of their troops to the northernmost city, seemingly threatened by the new arrival of Germans occupying the territory just to their north. This makes the Spartans nervous, but luckily they have a large enough military to wage 2 small wars. More forces arrive at the Parthian city, and it's just a matter of time before they lay siege. After weeks of debates, the Parthians decide to send the rest of the military to the city being surrounded, putting all their eggs in one basket, hoping to destroy the invading Spartan force at that city. Well, those 3 major battles have changed the face of those parts of the world, expanding or losing territory, turning the tides of battle, and surprising the world. Things like this are what happens to nations under constant threat of death or upheaval. With things looking bleak for Parthia, and with a major victory over Spain, these 2 nations seem to be in the same boat, both low in morale and getting rolled over a military giant. Hope is low for these 2 nations. For the Western Alliance, the only thing that's left for Gaul is the siege of La Rochelle, and the Romans gear up for the battle, any Spanish influence in Gaul. Well, it seems the end is almost near for the Parthians and just beginning for the Spanish. Subscribe and share, and then stay tuned to see who will win the battle at La Rochelle and that 3rd Parthian city.